Office and hear this historic address from President Joseph Robinette Biden.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office. This sacred space is surrounded by portraits of extraordinary American presidents. Thomas Jefferson wrote the immortal words that guide this nation. George Washington showed us presidents are not kings. Abraham Lincoln implored us to reject malice. Franklin Roosevelt inspired us to reject fear. I revere this all. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think is more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union, it's not about me, it's about you, your families, your futures. It's about we, the people. We can never forget that. And I never have. I've made it clear that I believe America is at an inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now determine our fate of our nation and the world for decades to come. America's going to have to choose between moving forward or backward, between hope and hate, between unity and division. We have to decide, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect, freedom, justice, and democracy? In this moment, we can see those we disagree with not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Can we do that? Does character in public life still matter? I believe I know the answer to these questions because I know you, the American people. And I know this, we are a great nation because we are good people. When you elected me to this office, I promise to always level with you, to tell you the truth. And the truth, the sacred cause of this country is larger than any one of us. And those of us who cherish that cause, cherish it so much. The cause of American democracy itself. Must unite to protect it. You know, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. It's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now. For the next 6 months, I'll be focused on doing my job as president. That means I'll continue to lower costs for hardworking families, grow our economy. I'll keep defending our personal freedoms and our civil rights, from the right to vote to the right to choose. I'll keep calling out hate and extremism, making clear there is no place in America for political violence, or any violence ever, period. And I'm going to keep speaking out to protect our kids from gun violence, our planet from climate crisis that is the existential threat. And I will keep fighting for my cancer moonshot so we can end cancer as we know it because we can do it. And I'm going to call for Supreme Court reform because this is critical to our democracy, Supreme Court reform. You know, I will keep working to ensure America remains strong, secure, and the leader of the free world. I'm the first president in this century to report to the American people that the United States is not at war anywhere in the world. We'll keep rallying a coalition of proud nations to stop Putin from taking over Ukraine, doing more damage. We'll keep NATO stronger, and I'll make it more powerful and more united than any time in all of our history. I'll keep doing the same for our allies in the Pacific. You know, when I came to office, conventional wisdom was that China would inevitably surpass the United States. That's not the case anymore. And I'm going to keep working to end the war in Gaza, bring home all the hostages, and bring peace and security to the Middle East and end this war. We're also working around the clock to bring home Americans being unjustly detained all around the world. You know, we've come so far since my inauguration. On that day I told you, as I stood in that winter, we stood in a winter of peril and a winter of possibilities. Peril and possibilities. We're in the grip of the war. We were in the grip of the worst pandemic in the century. The worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. The worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. We came together as Americans. We got through it. We emerged stronger, more prosperous, and more secure. Today we have the strongest economy in the world, creating nearly 16 million new jobs, a record. Wages are up. Inflation continues to come down. The racial wealth gap is the lowest it's been in 20 years. We're literally rebuilding our entire nation, urban, suburban, rural, and tribal communities. Manufacturing has come back to America. We're leading the world again in chips and science and innovation. We finally beat Big Pharma after all these years to lower the cost of prescription drugs for seniors. And I'm going to keep fighting to make sure we lower the cost for everyone, not just seniors. More people have health care today in America than ever before. And I signed one of the most significant laws helping millions of veterans and their families who are exposed to toxic materials. You know, most significant climate law ever in the history of the world. The first major gun safety law in 30 years. Today, violent crime rate is at a 50-year low. We're also securing our border. Border crossings are lower today than when the previous administration left office. I've kept my commitment to appoint the first black woman to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. I also kept my commitment to have an administration that looks like America. Be a president for all Americans. That's what I've done. I ran for president 4 years ago because I believed and still do that the soul of America was at stake. The very nature of who we are was at stake. That's still the case. America's an idea. An idea is stronger than any army, bigger than any ocean, more powerful than any dictator or tyrant. It's the most powerful idea in the history of the world. That idea is that we hold these truths to be self-evident. We're all created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We've never fully lived up to this sacred idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I do not believe the American people will walk away from it now. In just a few months, the American people will choose the course of America's future. I made my choice. I've made my views known. I would like to thank our great Vice President Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country. Now the choice is up to you, the American people. When you make that choice, remember the words of Benjamin Franklin hanging on my wall here in the Oval Office, alongside the busts of Dr. King and Rosa Parks and Cesar Chavez. When Ben Franklin was asked, as he emerged from the convention going on, whether the founders have given America a monarchy or a republic, Franklin's response was, a republic, if you can keep it. A republic, if you can keep it. Whether we keep our republic is now in your hands. My fellow Americans, it's been the privilege of my life to serve this nation for over 50 years. Nowhere else on earth could a kid with a stutter from modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, Claremont, Delaware, one day sit behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office as President of the United States. But here I am. That's what's so special about America. We're a nation of promise and possibilities, of dreamers and doers, of ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things. I give my heart and my soul to our nation, like so many others. I've been blessed a million times in return with the love and support of the American people. I hope you have some idea how grateful I am to all of you. The great thing about America is here, kings and dictators do not rule, the people do. History is in your hands. The power is in your hands. The idea of America lies in your hands. You just have to keep faith, keep the faith. And remember who we are. We're the United States of America. And there's simply nothing beyond our capacity. And we do it together. So let's act together. Preserve our democracy. God bless you all. May God protect our troops. Thank you.
President Biden saying the idea of America lies in your hands in a speech tonight from the Oval Office, pledging to finish out his term in office, but passing the political torch to Vice President Harris, saying, I revere this office, but I love my country more. I want to get a quick first take from three people who've worked with President Biden: David Axelrod, Kate Bedingfield, Van Jones. David,
I mean, I think it was about as good a speech as he could have made. I think it was powerful and poignant, and it had a principle behind it. And you just read it. The idea that the country is more important than any one individual, and that he thought he could best serve his country by stepping aside now. And he said, I've made my choice, now the choice is yours. I thought the end of that speech was so moving. The fact that, he is in fact a reflection of the greatness of America, that this kid from Scranton and Claymont.
a kid with a stutter. That's how it started.
Yes.
Which is so interesting to me that he's President of the United States, and that is the first way he describes himself, a kid with a stutter.
Yes. And of course, that's the thing, the quality of Joe Biden that has allowed him to persist all these years against all these odds. But he's leaving, forget the 3.5 weeks. He's done an unnatural thing, very rare in the annals of history. He stepped away from power, and he did it in the interest of the country.
In spite of, as he said, personal ambition.
I think this will, history will look kindly on Joe Biden, and I think people will look differently on him tomorrow than they did a week ago. And they will maybe see his achievements and his commitment to this country more clearly.
Okay.
I think one of the things that was so compelling about this is it had the emotional heft of a concession speech, but he was laying out a path forward, not just for the next 6 months of his presidency, but also kind of laying down a challenge to the country. Who do we want to be? And where do we want to go? And the other thing that struck me while I was listening to it, as somebody who's worked for him for a long time, worked with him in 2019, 2020, how much of the thematic was the same as I heard from him in 2019 when he was running for president, when he wanted to take on Donald Trump because he believed Trump posed a threat to democracy and that Trump was tearing us apart as a country in a fundamental way and was a threat to unity. And so in this moment that, by all measure is historic and I think will be remembered for a very long time, so much of what he was saying was so true to why he got into this race in the first place. And that, showed me that even as I know this was incredibly hard for him to do, this would be hard for anyone to do. It feels almost unnatural for someone to have achieved, the thing that they have been working toward their entire life and then say, the best thing is for me to step aside. Even knowing how hard that was for him, I think hearing those important themes come through, I think he was shining a light for the country moving forward over the next 3.5 months through a really perilous election.
He said America's at an inflection point. He asked the questions, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect? Does character in public life still matter? And he said, I hope you have some idea how grateful I am to all of you. He asked the question, does character still matter? Well, it does tonight. It does tonight. The kid with the stutter did good. He did good. That's a good man. He fell on the sword. He fell on the sword. Most heroes, they fight to the bitter end. He fell on this sword. He's an old guy. but the heart's still there. You know, the words aren't as clear, but the love is as clear. The heart is still there. And I think people need to look at this, because you had somebody sitting in that chair and he wouldn't give up power no matter what. Wouldn't give up power, let there be an insurrection, wouldn't get out of that chair. Even when the people voted for you to get out of the chair, he wouldn't get out of the chair. And you got somebody who's sitting in that same chair, showing that character does matter, showing that you can have grace, you can put the people first, you can pass the baton, and you're a bigger person for it. You're going to be more loved for it. So you got two examples now of what men with power do and how they act at the end. And you couldn't act any better than Joe Biden. That kid with the stutter grew up. He did a great job for this country, and he's doing a great job tonight. And I love that man. You know, to take into account, Joe Biden has worked his entire life to get into the White House, to become president, as many politicians dream about their entire lives. He got it. And David, I mean, it sounds like, you know, for people on the outside, well, of course he would make the decision to step aside. To Van's point, not a lot of people would make that decision.
No.
The last guy didn't.
No. I think this is historic for that reason, and it does underscore. I think Van makes the very appropriate point. He is sending a message. No one is bigger than this country, and I think that is a very different message than has been emanating from Donald Trump almost from the beginning, which is, the country is me. I am bigger than the country, you know, and I think that the contrast is very striking.
I think this is also, I mean, this is leadership in action. This is leadership by action. I think you have in Donald Trump, somebody who makes everything as small as possible, makes it about him. And here you have Joe Biden saying, no, the country's bigger than that. It's bigger than me. This office is bigger than me. And so I think in a moment where the country needs leadership, I think this is an incredibly selfless act of leadership that I think history will remember kindly.
I like to be said, forward versus backwards, hope versus hate, and unity versus division. I think that's pretty much the whole thing going forward this next 6 months. Some of the stuff he talked about he wants to do, I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to get done. He wants to perform the Supreme Court and all kinds of stuff. He's going to get beat up for that. But the direction that he's trying to take us on, I think is good.
And he challenged the American people. I mean, he really, he said he endorses Vice President Harris. He made clear that he believes that she is the person to lead us forward. And then he really took this moment again away from himself and even away from her in some ways, and said to the American people, this is now in your hands. This is to you. And I think that charge is also incredibly important as we enter into the final stretch of this campaign.
We have a lot more folks to hear from over the next 2 hours. Jake, let's go back to you.